I'm Catherine O'Leary. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I'm going to talk to you about our emotional regulation systems. And the reason for this is I hope it'll help you understand the way your mind works better, to understand the things that push you and drive you, the things that put you under threat and stress you, and also what helps you recharge your batteries. And I hope this will help you cope better this winter. But let's start by talking about the human brain. So as humans, we all have these amazingly complex and tricky brains. They've evolved over millions of years to ensure we survive to pass on our genes to the next generation. So a lot of the way we react to situations is just part of who we are. Now, psychologists think we have three main emotional regulation systems, and these are drive, threat, and soothe. And I'm going to talk you through each one in turn. So the first system I'm going to tell you about is our threat system, and this one is very familiar to us. We can think of it as our alarm system, and for most people it's very sensitive, so even slight threats will trigger it. It has a better safe than sorry approach. So as humans, we have a bias towards processing threat-based information, which makes sense when you think of it from an evolutionary point of view. So for our ancestors, if you can imagine thousands of years ago walking through the woods and coming across a rustling bush, well, those who were alarmed and frightened and ran away were likely to live another day and pass on their genes, whereas those who weren't concerned and didn't run away and didn't react were much more likely to end up as dinner. So you can see how we've evolved this way. Now, external things can trigger it. That might be seeing a fire or a wild animal, but it also can be triggered internally. And so that could be thinking about things that happened in the past, or it might be worrying about things that might happen in the future. So what happens to our bodies? Well, we go into a fight, flight, or freeze response. Our body gets flooded with stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. Our heart rate goes up, our blood pressure goes up, and we can start to feel anxious and angry, even depressed and disgusted. Our thinking becomes very narrow. So the front part of our brain, the bit we use for thinking through things and problem solving and forward planning, well, that gets shut down. And we only use the back of our brain. So it's much narrower thinking just to help us deal with the threat-based situation. So this winter, what kind of things are going to put us under threat, and what kind of things are going to trigger this system? Well, as someone with a kidney disease or a transplant, you're going to feel very vulnerable, and with COVID, having to shield and keep away from people. So it might be coming into hospital, having to go places where there might be other people and keep safe, might be having to think about the results of blood tests. Of course, the way we're living at the moment, being away from family and people we love, is going to put us under threat. And also things like working from home. So many of us are having to work from home and finding that particularly stressful too. So the next system I'm going to talk about is our drive system. This is the system that gets us out of bed in the morning, achieving tasks and getting things done, and it gives us feelings of excitement and achievement. And for our ancestors, it would have been the drive to get things like shelter and food and territory. It might be a little bit different for us. It might be things still like getting money and food, but it might be the drive to do something like train to run a marathon. So when we're in drive, we get a release of a brain chemical called dopamine, and this gives us feelings of excitement and achievement and that buzz. We feel there are changes in our sleep, and we feel pushed and driven to do things, and our thinking can become quite focused. What puts us into drive then? Well, it might be training for a marathon, like I said, or the pursuit of earning lots of money. Christmas can also put us into drive. So it might be having to get the perfect presents and gifts and wrap them well, and having the perfect Christmas dinner. And of course, COVID and having to react to COVID puts us into drive, having to remember all the rules and regulations and things that we have to do to keep ourselves safe, like keeping a distance and wearing a mask and washing our hands. And the final system I'm going to tell you about is our Soothe system. In evolutionary terms, we can think of it as our caregiving system. And we might see mammals sitting together, spending time grooming one another. So species that don't care for one another, where the individuals have to go it alone from birth, like tadpoles, for example, have a very low survival rate. But species that care for one another and receive care have a much higher survival rate. So what happens when we're in the Soothe system? Well, it taps into our feel-good brain chemicals like oxytocin, which is also called the love hormone. We feel calm and more relaxed and slower, and our batteries can get recharged. But not only that, the Soothe system acts as a brake for the other two, for threat and drive, and it calms them all down, and we feel safe and protected. Our thinking is different too. We feel more reflective, we feel more compassionate towards ourselves and towards others, and we're able to do more open thinking. So like the other systems, there are internal and external triggers that activate this system. So it might be a hug, or if you think about a baby who's crying, being rocked in the parent's arms soothes the baby, and that feels good for the parent and the baby. And it can also be internal, so it might be meditation or practicing mindfulness, or being out in nature, or taking a walk on a beach, or sitting down with a hot drink and a book. So to explain these systems further, I'm going to talk you through 3 different people and their systems. And the first is Father Christmas. Now, Father Christmas has a big drive circle, so he has lots to do. He has to make his lists and check them twice. He has to see who's being naughty, who's being nice. He has to make sure the elves are all working in the workshop and everyone gets the right present on Christmas Eve. Father Christmas has a threat circle, not as big as Drive, but he really needs that because he may meet dangers. He may get stuck in a chimney, or he may have a foggy Christmas Eve that he needs to react to and deal with. And Father Christmas has a good sized Soothe circle, so once he's done his work, Father Christmas is able to sit back in front of the fire with his cat and spend time relaxing with Mother Christmas. And the next person is Kevin, and Kevin's from the movie Home Alone. And Kevin wakes up one morning to find that his family have all gone on vacation and he is left home alone. And not only that, there are burglars intent on breaking in. So as you see here, Kevin has a really big threat circle. He feels under danger and he needs to react appropriately, and you can see it in his expression. But Kevin also has a biggish drive circle, and he sets about building booby traps to catch the burglars. And Kevin also has a fairly big Soothe circle. Like any child left home alone, Kevin indulges in all the things that he's not allowed to do when his parents are around, like staying up late, listening to loud music, watching movies, and eating all the things he loves. And the final person is Buddy the Elf. Now, Buddy the Elf is born in the North Pole and has to travel from there to New York to find his father. So Buddy needs a good drive circle because he needs to get himself from the North Pole to New York. And he meets dangers along the way, so he needs a threat circle too to help him react appropriately. But Buddy has a really big Soothe circle. So Buddy likes eating candy and sweet things. He loves arts and crafts and building things. He loves singing on his own and singing with other people. And Buddy loves hugs and snuggles. But it's all about balance. So none of these systems are bad. They're all important and they're all essential for our survival. So if you imagine these 3 balloons in a fixed box, it's a fixed space. So if one balloon is overinflated, then there's not much space for the others. So if you can imagine the threat balloon was filling the box and the Soothe and the Drive were very small, then that person is going to feel overwhelmed and distressed. But also, if you imagine that the Soothe circle is filling the box, then that's not good either. That person's going to struggle to get things done, and if they did meet danger, they may not react appropriately to keep themselves safe. So maybe think about what your circles are like. If you had to draw them out, which of your circles would be the biggest? Now, for lots of people I meet, their threat circles and their drive circles are much bigger than their Soothe circles, and that's really not surprising when you think about it. If you have kidney disease or you've had a transplant, there's lots to put you under threat, and there's lots you need to do. So your drive circle needs to be big too. You need to keep yourself well and safe. And of course, at winter, we face lots of threats, and that could be weather, inclement weather that we have to deal with. And also this year, we're having to deal with COVID. So that puts us into both threat and drive. And it's not surprising that people will find themselves bouncing between one and the other and feeling quite overwhelmed. And if you think about it, this winter, the things that we normally do to soothe ourselves, like spending time with friends and family, we're not able to do. And so that makes it all that harder. So it's really worth thinking about the things that you can do now to help yourself feel soothed. And I urge you to go look at this website, blessingmanifesting.com, as there's lots of lovely ideas and things to try. So for example, you may want to use your senses. You may want to use candles or low lighting or calming noise. You may want to have a warm bath or use a weighted blanket or use aromatherapy. Or you may want a warm drink and really taste and enjoy it. It's also really important to think about how you can stay connected with the people that you care about this winter. That might be through regular telephone calls or video calls, or you might choose to write letters or send emails. Some people are finding it particularly difficult not to hug and kiss people on greeting, and finding that very hard. So it's worth thinking about how you can create a special socially distanced greeting when you meet up from a distance with the people you love. And that might be putting your hand on your heart, it might be learning some sign language to sign to one another, or if you have very good balance, it might be doing a toe bump where you tap each other's toes rather than shaking hands. You can also play games online, and that can help you feel connected with people. So children are very good at soothing, so it's worth thinking back to what you used to do when you were a child. So what helped you feel soothed when you were a child? Did you spend time outside in nature? Did you like music? Did you spend time doing arts and crafts or jigsaws and reading? And finally, it's worth thinking about how you speak to yourself. So oftentimes the way we speak to ourselves can put us into threat or drive. So for example, if you burn the Christmas dinner and you tell yourself, you've ruined Christmas and you're no good, then you're quite likely to feel under threat. So it's worth thinking about how you would talk to a friend in the same situation. What would you say to them to help them feel encouraged and calm? And then using that same voice for yourself. So finally, this winter is probably going to be harder than normal, and there's going to be lots to activate your threat and your drive systems. So feeling distressed is understandable, and it's okay not to be okay. But if you think about your emotional regulation systems as lights on your Christmas tree, have a think about what your Christmas tree looks like. Are there more red lights? Are there more blue lights? And what can you do to increase the number of green lights on your tree this year? Thank you.